Hi guys, so my name is Zainab Adedeji, and I'm a Londoner, born and raised pretty much in London, and I grew up in West London to be specific, around like the Labra Grove, Notting Hill area. So I'm going to talk about being African. I'm Nigerian of heritage. Obviously I was born here, like I said, but my parents are from Nigeria. I moved over here, I guess in the 70s. So for me, in the area that I live, it's not predominantly African. So I remember going to secondary school, in which I guess you could say it wasn't cool to be African. Um, I hung around with a mixture of girls from all over the world. There was quite a few Caribbean ladies, and one comment that has never left me from secondary school was when when you're getting to know people and everyone's always like, "Where are you from? Where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm from Nigeria." Oh, like they were like, "Where's that?" It's like, "Oh, Africa." And they were like, "Oh, Africa. Oh, can I ask a question?" I remember one of the girls, she was from St. Lucia. She's like, "Can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And she was like, "Oh, like, what do you eat with at home? Do you have cutlery?" And I was like, "What?" Of course, like, I've never ever been spoken to like that, or I've never heard of anyone making such an assumption that because you're African that you don't have cutlery. And there was like just numbers of questions that these ladies asked me. I guess a part of it was a level of ignorance. But also I want to also say it's probably the lack of education, whereby their only contact with African people were the adverts that you would see on, like, the TV, whereby it would be, asking for sponsorship and asking for money, and, flies on their faces, and people, fetching water. So I think the lack of education definitely played a part in that. But I also think back then, it is pretty much still something to today. But there's been things that's helped, Africa become something on the map in which people from all generations and from all countries worldwide appreciate. Like they have like a level, there's a level of ignorance towards it, but I think people just didn't know. And from my experiences, when I was in secondary school, some of the females from the Caribbean didn't want to accept that their heritage was African. Um, does anyone else kind of have any experiences like that, whereby Caribbean girls or any other race wasn't really understanding of African? I guess I could say to an extent I was bullied because I was African. Luckily, I've got thicker skin, so I never took it, to heart, and I was able to defend myself. But does anyone else have any tales of being African, in which they remember, like when people used to say African boo-boo scratcher, or people were embarrassed to openly admit that they were African or of African heritage? I would love to hear the rest of you guys' story, just to see if anyone relates to me, or if anyone can share some common ground with me.